Let's bring you some other world news on the programme. And after almost 2 decades of negotiation, India and the European Union have now finalised a landmark free trade agreement. The European Union President, Ursula von der Leyen, described it as the mother of all deals, creating a market of 2 billion people. Well, New Delhi and Brussels are both hoping that this pact will help shield against challenges from the world's two biggest economies, the United States and China. Well, here's a little then from that European delegation speaking earlier on today in New Delhi.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people, two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion. A strong message that cooperation is the best answer to global challenges.
Today is a historic moment. We are opening a new chapter in our relations on trade, on security, on people-to-people ties. I'm the President of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen.
Well, covering the events for us from New Delhi, the Indian capital, is our correspondent Nadia Kumari. Here's a little from her.
There was a setback for export-oriented Indian companies after the punishing tariff by Trump administration, which was up to 50%, particularly textile and garment industry, that is the second largest employer in India, was struggling and seeking to diversify their export destinations and make new clientele to offset after the tariffs put by the US administration. They are particularly happy and welcoming this deal, and they say that this will make up for the losses and the job cuts which they had to go through after the US tariffs were imposed in India. So they are welcoming the deal, and it's definitely a win-win situation for both sides at a time when Washington is targeting both India and EU with steep tariffs.
That was Nadia Kumari reporting for us. Well, let's stay with this story now and bring in Tobias Schultt on the programme. He works as an Asia Associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Hello to you, and thanks very much for speaking to us here on France 24.
Good afternoon.
Look, this agreement, as I was saying earlier on, has been almost 20 years in the making, but talks really ramped up, didn't they, in the past 6 months? Why was it so important for the EU and for India to get this deal done now?
Well, there are several reasons for this, and let me start by saying that after the two parties started to negotiate the trade agreement in 2007, they already halted the trade negotiations in 2012-13 when they realized they could not reach an agreement. So the negotiations were restarted after the start of the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine in February 2022, when both parties realized that the world is changing and that they might perhaps have underestimated the relevance of each other. So there was a geopolitical momentum that was created, and of course, China, which is kind of increasingly protectionist, and now US President Donald Trump using trade as a weapon is and has increasingly shown to both partners, the EU and India, that they really need each other.
OK, well, let's talk about the impact that this agreement's going to have then. Let's start perhaps with the Indian economy. What kind of changes will we see there? More jobs, perhaps?
Well, I think the changes that we will see will be more of a long-term road that we have to observe. The EU and India currently stand at roughly 180 billion euros of annual trade. And it is only kind of increasing slowly, but with a more kind of rapid speed. And what the two leaders, Ursula von der Leyen and Narendra Modi, are now pitching is to their economies to refocus on each other. And your colleague was just speaking about the sectors that are mostly affected by the US-India trade. I mean, for India now, in terms of jewelry, in terms of textile, the EU becomes an alternative market. So there is a diversification aspect to it. And there are several Indian sectors, as textiles and jewelry, but also in IT, in different kind of services, in pharma, where India will increasingly look to kind of gain ground on the European market.
And the same question then for the EU economy, what sectors stand to gain?
Well, I think that really depends on which countries you certainly look at. So if you look at the kind of German industries, I think many will kind of look very closely on the situation of cars, which have been facing 110% of tariffs in India. And the trajectory now is that they go down to 10%. So this is, of course, a dramatic change, and it will open many opportunities. The same is true for wine, which has been facing 150% tariffs in India. And there's now a route to reduce the wine tariffs down to 20-30% in the next year. So there are kind of course, great developments in these areas. In some areas, the percentage is, of course, far less, but it is very clear, as you pointed out in your introduction, that there are now markets bringing together around 2 billion people that will look at each other in very different and diverse sectors.
And look, over the past couple of weeks here on France 24, we've talked an awful lot about the Mercosur deal between the European Union and countries in South America. For lots of people here in Europe, particularly for farmers, that deal is a very controversial, very unpopular one. This one, though, with India, doesn't really seem to have generated the same kind of concerns. Do you have a sense as to why?
Yeah, the key reason why the India deal is in general more popular within different European party families is because it is clear for everyone that India matters. India is the fastest growing G20 nation. It has every year around 5 to 7% of annual growth. And it is clear that the Indian market is becoming increasingly important in the world. And in addition to this, we do have the geopolitical argument, where India is among those middle powers, similar to the EU, that does not want to suffer in a world where imperialist policy styles are becoming more normal conducted by some great powers. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the most areas within the agricultural sections of trade deals, which we do have in the Mercosur deal, are not included in the FTA between the EU and India. So the largest parts of agriculture are excluded from the India-EU trade deal. And this, of course, excludes one of the major kind of tripping stones that was kind of relevant for the Mercosur deal.
Dr. Tobias Schultt, really good to get your thoughts on this today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.